Welcome back. A tough road lies ahead for the South African economy, with job losses potentially reaching up to 7 million as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. According to projections by the National Treasury, this would push the country's unemployment rate to more than 50%. The domestic economy, which was already taken strain before COVID-19, has had its ratings downgraded by Fitch, Moody's, and more recently S&P. Let's talk to Trinity Nkube, an economic analyst in South Africa, to tell us more. Good afternoon, Mr. Nkube. On the eve of Labour Day, the National Treasury released its projections for the economy, showing that South Africa is at risk of losing 7 million jobs due to COVID-19, and that pushes unemployment rate to over 50%. How does this align with what is being marked today as Labour Day?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me again. It is devastating. But that is the reality of the economic situation in South Africa, losing almost 7 million jobs and taking our unemployment rate to almost more than 50%. That is really devastating for the economy, and we're going to see how all the rescue packages are going to at least minimize the damage.
How do you see this playing out for a country that is already in a recession with unemployment on the rise?
Well, we were already in trouble before the pandemic. Hence, whatever we are going through right now is the most devastating episode in any economy that you can think of. I mean, you can liken this to the Great Depression, in which case even people who are supposed to help us or who we expect to help us are also in a lot of trouble. Hence, this is going to be a very tough one. However, we must commend the government for all the bailout and all the packages, the stimulus packages that they are rolling out to help small businesses and unemployed people. As you might understand, that we always have glitches. Even in America, they have glitches when it comes to rolling out this. So we are hoping that in the next 3 months, that everybody who is supposed to get hold of cash and packages, stimulus packages, will be able to move on from this crisis.
Now, looking at the Treasury's projections now, they actually show that the manufacturing, construction, trade, catering, and accommodation and financial and business services sectors will be worse affected. How much attention has been given to these sectors during this pandemic?
They have been given a priority. As you might have followed, some of the ministers have actually come out and looked at those priority areas, because those are the biggest share of employment numbers. So if you look at manufacturing, mining and agriculture and so forth, we have looked at that. However, if you look at tourism, however, there is a lot of problems when it comes to tourism. It has come at a standstill, basically. So we are looking at almost the entire tourism industry being wiped out. So we'd have to start from scratch. However, there's been some sectors that have been saved, and hopefully we can kick on from there.
The finance minister is projecting a contraction of 6.4% this year, and that's even as the IMF has projected a decline of 5.8%. But what do analysts like you make of this?
I can speak for myself. I think the damage is much more than that. I'm looking at more than 10%. However, the economy is always about perceptions, is about sentiments. You always try to keep the sentiment, on the positive side of things. I'd like to speak the truth, as you have gotten to know me. I would say it's around 10%. However, it's not impossible to come out of that, that economic depression. But we have to be realistic at the level of the damage that is there. It is real. If you lose more than 7 million jobs, the economy is not going to contract by only 6.5%. Taking into account that we're already in trouble. We were already, I think, almost 2%, negative 2% without the pandemic. So if you add the pandemic to that, we're also going to feel the after effects, the leg of this pandemic in the next 18 to 24 months. So I'm looking at a conservative 10%. It could be worse than that.
Talking about more troubles now, the downgrades keep coming in due to the economic recession, which of course happened before the COVID-19 pandemic. And the most recent is from S&P, which downgraded South Africa's credit rating to junk. What's the implication of this?
Well, we've now embraced the culture of being downgraded to junk. Unfortunately, we are getting used to this. it's just going to worsen the economic situation that we have. However, very disappointed at the timing of these rating agencies. I thought that they would have put on hold some of these rating agencies because everybody's in trouble. Some of the biggest economies in the world are in trouble. However, they seem to say, well, let's do our job, let's keep rating, because then that just puts us in a more negative outlook in terms of borrowing whenever you. Fortunately, when you look at the IMF and some of the, lending institutions, they've looked at it and given us a break by not raising interest rates, by not putting a lot of conditions on the debt and the loans. And we would have liked a situation where they would have let the pandemic play out and then come back and, look at the rating. It just comes as the timing for me is very disappointing.
Perhaps some good news for some in South Africa as your country has begun easing the lockdown. Could you lead us into next week? What are expectations for workers as the economy reopens?
I must say people are pretty happy to go outside today. So you're looking at happier people and a bit of recovery in some of the sectors that have been allowed to open up. So we should start to see a bit of recovery, although we shouldn't be too optimistic to say that the recovery is going to be, things are not going to be normal, if I may put it that way. However, we are looking at a better indication of economic activity coming into place. And from there, we can kick on. I mean, we are resilient people. We've been through tough times, maybe not as tough as this. So we remain a little bit optimistic and real at the same time.
It's good to always stay optimistic. Thanks, Mr. Trinity Nkubi, for speaking with us on Business Incorporated.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me again.